Tonight they shall not grow old. Australia pauses to pay their respects 106 years since the landing at Gallipoli, gathering at dawn services and in their backyards in scenes that were distinctly 2020. It's Sunday the 25th of April. You're watching 6 News also tonight.
We, the jury, in the above entitled matter as to count 1, unintentional second-degree murder while committing a felony, find the defendant guilty.
The fallout from the guilty verdict in the Derek Chauvin trial continues as debate rages over yet another police shooting. Was the officer right to pull his gun on 16-year-old Ma'Khia Bryant as she charged at 2 people with a knife? We'll speak to a former US Senator to get his thoughts. And China lashes out after the federal government rips up Victoria's Belt and Road deal with Beijing, branding the move a suicidal attack and vowing to respond with potentially crippling countermeasures.
Australia is the only and the first country to tear apart an agreement. It has started a bad precedent.
Good evening. 106 years since the landing at Gallipoli today, the nation paused to pay their respects to those who've fallen. Crowds returned to Anzac Day dawn services in all states except WA, but we still remembered in ways that were distinctly 2020. Chief Reporter Connor Forcade is live at the Shrine of Remembrance in Brisbane for us. Connor, what's the mood like there tonight?
Leo, this time last year, Anzac Square was a virtual ghost town, but as dawn broke over Brisbane this morning, a large crowd gathered here for the city's dawn service. 12 hours later, on this rather chilly evening, an air of sombre reflection still lingers. This morning, streets around the nation fell silent, then filled with this haunting sound. On a day where a country remembered and promised to never forget, for 105 years we haven't. The first time Anzac Day was commemorated was on the first anniversary of Australia's landing at Gallipoli. After COVID curtailed traditional commemorations in 2020, marches and dawn services made a return this year, albeit with crowd caps in every city bar Brisbane. The city of Perth and its surrounds, currently in the grips of a 3-day lockdown, was the exception. With services cancelled, WA Premier Mark McGowan urged people to instead take part in driveway dawn services. And across the nation, that's exactly what people did, lighting up the dawn from their driveways, a legacy of 2020, a tradition that could be here to stay. Overseas, services such as those in Turkey and France did not go ahead this year, with private commemorations taking their place. Thousands also paid their respects at the Australian War Memorial in Canberra for the dawn service and national ceremony. Here are some of the key moments and tributes in what was a solemn affair.
This time last year, like so many other times in our history, we faced a defining moment as a nation, a moment of uncertainty and danger when the future seemed so uncertain, masked by fog. We couldn't gather, indeed, but we held candles in driveways and on balconies, and we played the last post on radios and iPhones, as some, especially in our West, will do again today. And together we called on our past to light up the dawn. And in doing so, we rediscovered a deep truth about who we are. Our strength is found in each other.
This is the Shrine of Remembrance, the centrepiece of Anzac Square. Small candlelit commemorations continue even tonight. Here, the eternal flame burns bright, a symbol of eternal remembrance for over 100,000 Australians who paid the ultimate price, lest we forget.
Alright, Connor 4K live for us tonight, thank you. And as Aussies pay their respects to our fallen soldiers, the question on everyone's lips is, do we get a public holiday on Monday? Well, the answer depends on where you live. Queensland, WA, SA and the ACT and NT all get a day off, but Victoria, Tasmania and New South Wales will not. Now, the greater debate about having public holidays on a Monday if that holiday happens to fall on a Sunday has, of course, been happening for years. Do you support it? Let us know in the comment section below. Changing pace now, and health authorities say another 3 cases of rare blood clots are very likely linked to the AstraZeneca vaccine. The Guardian reports that the suspected cases are in a 35-year-old woman from New South Wales, a 49-year-old man from Queensland, and an 80-year-old man from Victoria. It takes the total amount of reported blood clot cases from the jab in Australia to at least 6, but the TGA maintains that the benefits greatly outweigh the risks. So far, over 1 million doses of the AstraZeneca vaccine have been administered in Australia. Perth is now in day 2 of its 3-day snap lockdown after a Melbourne man tested positive for coronavirus and spent around 5 days in the city while potentially infectious. The health department said in a statement that 2 guests staying in rooms opposite each other tested positive for the virus and were later linked through genomic sequencing. There are now only 4 reasons to leave home: work if you can't do it remotely, shopping for essentials, medical or healthcare reasons, and for up to 1 hour of exercise daily. The lockdown announcement has also caused travel between New Zealand and WA to be put on pause less than a week after the Trans-Tasman bubble began. Overseas now, just 3 months out from the Tokyo Olympics, Japan has declared a 3rd state of emergency for a number of regions. Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga announced the emergency for Osaka, Kyoto, Hyogo and Tokyo from April 25 today until at least May the 11th, with COVID-19 cases continuing to rise despite daily infections briefly lowering in March. Suga says he sincerely apologises for making the decision, with the declaration coming only a month after the last state of emergency ended. Since the pandemic began, Japan has recorded around 500,000 cases in total and about 10,000 deaths. The fallout from the guilty verdict in the Derek Chauvin trial is right now continuing across America and the world, but some activists say it's only a small step in the greater movement for racial justice. There are also still plenty of fears of unrest after the fatal police shooting of a 16-year-old girl in Ohio just hours later, which sparked a number of overnight protests. Let's bring in former US Senator Donald Betts to discuss both these topics. Donald, thanks very much for joining us tonight. What was your immediate reaction to seeing Derek Chauvin found guilty earlier this week?
Well, my immediate reaction was several text messages that came through that said, guilty, guilty, guilty. But I always knew that the jury would come back with a guilty verdict. I believe it was just a matter of time. There were a lot of elements at play, and the world was watching, quite frankly. And Minneapolis doesn't need any more protest or disappointment. We all saw the video. The community and the public was the judge and the jury in this one. And quite frankly, we knew it. We knew that he was guilty. I mean, he killed a man on camera. I mean, that's not hard to kind of decipher.
Now, Nancy Pelosi has come under fire from both sides over some comments she made following the verdict. Let's take a look at that clip and we'll get your reaction on the other side.
Thank you, George Floyd, for sacrificing your life for justice, for being there to call out to your mom. How heartbreaking was that? Call out for your mom. I can't breathe. But because of you and because of thousands, millions of people around the world who came out for justice, your name will always be synonymous with justice.
So there we go. Do you think she was right to say that George Floyd sacrificed his life?
I don't think it was I think her words may have been taken out of context. She could have explained that a little bit better. I think she was coming around, and not to defend Nancy Pelosi or any other politician, they can speak for themselves, but it was I wouldn't call it a sacrifice, but he he died, and as a result of result of that murder, so much has happened positively as it relates to legislation that will hopefully change some of the behaviors of law enforcement in America and the way we engage with people of color. Had this not happened and broadcast all over the world, you know, in real time, we may not be having this discussion right now. But it was so detrimental to and devastating for many to have watched that video, that it inspired change all over the world. George Floyd's daughter herself said, "My daddy changed the world," and he certainly did, but he lost his life in doing so. And as a result of him losing his life, you can see racism being addressed. You can see social justice being the top priority of corporate executives and companies all over the world. As you can remember back, the protests that happened all over the world, that was because of what we witnessed in George Floyd. So when Nancy Pelosi mentions the sacrifice, it was a sacrifice, but it wasn't one that he chose to sacrifice. It was one that he had no choice in that matter. But as a result, you can see the change inspired through the death and murder of George Floyd, most certainly.
Okay, and just quickly before we let you go, we know there's obviously going to have to be a lot of progress made when it comes to relationships between African Americans and police officers in the US. Are you worried about further riots this coming summer, and what's your hope for the future?
But at the end of the day, not all the police officers are bad police officers. And a lot of the crimes, I mean, if there are crimes out there, then police have to do their job. And unfortunately, within that line of duty, people lose their lives. I just hope that police officers are focused on the duty of care, making sure that they have done all that they could do before they have an altercation that takes someone's life. I'm hoping that police officers can build a better relationship with communities of color, both African American, Latino, and now, you know, Asian Americans and just people of color in general, and just have that dialogue and build a relationship so that people are feeling comfortable around the police. This last instance, the 16-year-old girl was the one that called the police, and she's the one that lost her life. So hopefully this doesn't backfire and people just stop calling police altogether and begin taking matters into their own hands. That's something we don't want. We want to be able to trust police officers to come into the community and handle situations that are high tension situations in an amicable fashion. If that cannot happen, then we have a kakistocracy on our hands. We're in true trouble when we can't depend on the people that we pay to protect us. So again, we have a lot of work to do. I'm hoping that this summer doesn't see what we've seen in the past, but it's likely if we don't pass legislation and do things to hold those officers that are not familiar with the territory that they're asked to police, we're going to have some major issues all over again. I'm tired of this. I'm tired of hearing of innocent lives. And wouldn't necessarily say all are innocent, but unarmed individuals having their lives taken away from them in an instant. You know, young people, old people. You know, the George Floyd incident was a terrible incident because over 9 minutes, an officer leaned his knee on the neck of an unarmed man. That doesn't say justice. That doesn't say we're trying to protect the community. It's saying that your life doesn't matter, and we don't care, and we'll fight it all the way to the highest court if we have to. But until officers can respect the lives of African Americans and people of color in those instances, I also will bring up the lieutenant who was maced in the face. He was decorated in his uniform with the American flag on his shoulder. That's saying, to treat an officer, a military officer, one who is sworn to protect our nation, if his life doesn't matter and he's a man of color, do Black lives matter? That's a question that we have to all ask ourselves in those offices of power, in those positions. We should all have that justice and liberty with our law enforcement individuals. I'm hoping and I'm praying that is the case moving forward.
All right, we'll leave it there. Donald Betts, thanks very much for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
All right, well, China has lashed out at Australia after the federal government ripped up Victoria's Belt and Road Initiative deal with Beijing, branding the move a suicidal attack and vowing to respond with potentially crippling countermeasures. In a statement, Foreign Affairs Minister Marise Payne said she found the agreements to be, quote, inconsistent with Australia's foreign policy or adverse to our foreign relations, but China's own foreign ministry has now hit back.
China has signed BRI cooperation documents with 140 countries, 31 international organizations. Australia is the only and the first country to tear apart an agreement. It has started a bad precedent. In recent years, Australia using dubious and groundless reasons, citing foreign policy and national security interests, undermined normal exchange and cooperation with China and poisoned mutual trust and to people-to-people atmosphere. Such political manipulation and bullying practice run counter to the spirit of our comprehensive strategic partnership. It is backpedaling, very egregious, and dampens the confidence of localities and businesses.
The warnings come after growing trade tensions between Australia and China over the past 6 months, mainly relating to our barley, beef and wine. Caitlyn Jenner has confirmed rumours that she's running for Governor of California, one of many hopefuls looking to challenge Democrat Gavin Newsom in a recall election. In a statement, Jenner described herself as a compassionate disruptor who would, quote, help to advance the movement for equality throughout her life. California is one of 20 US states that allows recalls, which requires campaigners to collect enough signatures to match at least 12% of turnout in the last election. If it does go ahead, voters will be asked 2 questions. Should Mr. Newsom be replaced? And if so, who should replace him? The state's Republican Party believes they've already exceeded that 12% mark and are now awaiting official verification. Well, they claimed that Donald Trump won the election, that he would be inaugurated on January 20, and that people just needed to trust the plan. Of course, none of that happened, but a new report from consultancy the Sofan Center has now pointed the finger at Russia and China as being heavily involved in leveraging the QAnon conspiracies to promote division in the US, with cameo appearances from players in Iran and Saudi Arabia. Earlier I spoke to investigative journalist and Crikey contributor Tom Ravlic about what exactly this all means.
Far-right extremists have been getting lots of attention in the past fortnight, both in America and in Australia. Let's start with the United States first. The Sofan Center, which specialises in terrorism and national security issues, has pointed to the fact that QAnon conspiracy adherents are proving to be right recruits for far-right extremist organisations. The report also points to the fact that Russia, China, Saudi Arabia and folks in Iran are also using QAnon conspiracy theories, like the fact that the election was possibly rigged, or that there haven't been a legitimate president since 1871, all that kind of tripe that's been circulating online. the Russians, the Chinese, Iranians and Saudi Arabians have been quite happily, as like pigs in muck, exploiting that. The Supan Centre suggests that social media giants look at the way in which they deplatform individuals and groups to ensure that they take account of the fact that national players are doing this disinformation, as well as looking at their algorithms to stop themselves pushing these conspiracies. In Australia, however, the Parliamentary Committee looking at radicalisation and extremism has 2 hearings coming up on the 29th and the 30th of April. Guess what? The social media giants are going to present to the Parliamentary Committee and talk about what they do in order to regulate and remove extremist content.
An Italian hospital employee has been accused of skipping work for 15 years. Local media reports the man is alleged to have stopped turning up to the Chiaro hospital in the southern city of Catanzaro. Pretty poor Italian pronunciation, I should probably know it. But regardless, back in 2005, that's when he apparently stopped turning up. He's now being investigated for fraud, extortion and abuse of office. A number of managers at the hospital are also being investigated in connection with the man. So, could you manage to skip work for that long? Let us know in the comment section below. Well, tomorrow, Big Brother Australia returns for its 13th season on air, keeping with many of the same controversial format changes we saw last year, including the entire show being pre-recorded. But will Channel 7 actually be able to bring in a whole new generation of viewers for the program? Earlier I spoke exclusively to former Big Brother winner and the host of the TV Reload podcast, Ben Norris, to get his perspective.
I think it is worlds ahead of where it was where we left Big Brother. Like, I think what 2020 proved was they were getting the Big Brother format and very much making it similar to elements that they'd borrowed from different other franchises that were happening around the world. So it is a challenge-based Big Brother still in 2021, but I think that they understand the product a lot better. It's just a fantastic show. The housemate selection is amazing. I haven't seen a cast like that since like 2013. I thought Tim and Tully and Tahan and Drew and all of those people were just so fantastic and such a great collaborative cast. You know, we missed that in 2014. We missed that in 2020. And now in 2021, these people are turned up. You know, these are some of the most brilliant Big Brother characters you'll ever see. Big Brother is what it is now. Like, I don't know if you could make Big Brother the way you used to make Big Brother. It's a very expensive exercise and it was quite slow. You know, it was a slow burn. And yes, fans out there and the diehard purists will always miss that slow format, but television's changed a lot. You know, you don't have the time to watch Sarah Marie burn some fish fingers, you know, in the kitchen. You know, that sort of stuff doesn't really happen. So I will say I've come to enjoy the privileges of being able to pre-record Big Brother, because when it starts on Monday, you will 100% see that it is very stylized, it's very well edited, it's very well put together. So it's I don't know, it's probably the best picture storybook version of Big Brother we've ever seen.
And again, Big Brother returns tomorrow night on Channel 7. Meanwhile, a speedy dog has broken free from her owners to win a high school sports race in the US. Take a look at this. Now, the student that the dog chased after, Grace Laney, told reporters that she first thought the pooch named Holly was actually another runner, before realising she was a bit too small to be human. The footage has been viewed more than 150,000 times on YouTube. Alright, well now here's Ivan and Sarah with what's coming up later tonight on WAMN News.
Thanks, Leo. Coming up on WAMN News, Anzac Day cancelled. Dawn services gave way to driveway ceremonies as Perth entered a snap 3-day lockdown.
Our hero, the kids carrying on their granddad's digger legacy. A WAMN News exclusive.
Plus, the route of Anzac, an exclusive illustration telling the story of Gallipoli. plus Dr. Andrew Miller's COVID comment.
Join us tonight after 5:30 West Coast time on the WAMN News Facebook page.
Alright, thanks to both Ivan and Sarah there. Now to tomorrow's forecast across the country. Brisbane partly cloudy, a top of 24, 20 in Sydney, 18 degrees in the nation's capital, 17 in Melbourne, also 17 in Hobart, 21 in Adelaide, 26 in Alice Springs, 28 and sunny in Perth, though it doesn't really matter when you're stuck inside, and in Darwin, a warm top of 33. And finally tonight, I know I've been plugging our website a lot recently. Well, we've got some exciting news about it. Our front page, which obviously was redesigned and, well, pretty much created only a month ago, it's getting a brand new look starting next week. We'll have a trending section, a section about our must-watch stories, and of course, much more of the latest breaking news, so you can just go onto our website like any other news website and you will see the latest headlines from the day. We're also getting a number of sections where you can also see all the times we've been in the media, which has actually been a fair bit more than you can imagine. I did not even realise how many times they featured me. And we will also have our interview with the ABC from earlier this week, talking about that infamous milkshake consent video that is on our YouTube channel now, if you'd like to have a look at it. And we will also be fixing the bugs on our website. 2 out of 3 times it should work. That one time it doesn't work, that's going to be eliminated. It will be 100% success rate on that website. All those changes come into effect next week. When it exactly happens, we will announce it on all our social media pages. And that is 6 News for this Sunday evening. You can stay up to date with the latest headlines by visiting our website. Still a lot of news there, 6newsau.com, and by following us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Lit. Just search 6 News AU to find us. I'm Leonardo Puglisi. Thanks for your company. Good night.